In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today, we're going to have a conversation about AI and software and ethics and structure that smart marketers and business people are using to wind our way through current marketing conditions. And welcome to the show, Christian.
Emanuel, pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, you've got a long career in technology and so
30 plus years now, I guess. It's quite a while, right?
Where did time go?
Same place my hair went. It's just gone. Yeah.
I hear you. Well, can you share with us a little bit about your journey into AI?
Oh, yeah. So I said 30 some years ago, before the World Wide Web existed, before we had browsers, I was doing a lot of internet development stuff, CGI Perl back way back. And as soon as we started building websites, like the promise of like that information sharing and the data and the way that we could use it to find insights and do fun things became really critical. And so by 1996, we were starting to build out pretty robust e-commerce engines with recommendations and stuff like that, which isn't the beginning of AI, but it's the beginning of my experience with it, right?
Sure. Yep.
And then into ad tech and on, where we were doing digital twins of people based on their browsing behavior and making recommendations over what ads to see and all that kind of stuff up till today, which now we're doing, we're helping companies optimize their IT without having to speak geek.
Well, that's an interesting development.
It's always been the superpower of us turbo nerds, is that we could speak to the machines the way that the machines wanted to be spoken to, and now you don't have to anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, like for the LLMs, where the prompt writing is I think the biggest area that people have a challenge with, right? And maybe are overcomplicating it in some ways.
Oh yeah. Good LLMs today, and especially if they've got sentiment analysis built in front of them, figure out what you're looking for and start to prepare for that. They kind of build up a contextual window of who you are and what you're looking for. And so by doing the prompt engineering thing that a lot of people do, you're actually kind of screwing yourself up. It's better to just ask it the way you would ask, talk to it as if it was just a person. And then when it starts giving you good results, say, thank you, that was great. Just like you were talking to a person.
Yeah, I love that. Where it's basically it could be treated as a staff person, and you've got to build this kind of relationship, and even asking it what it needs in order to get better results. Right.
That's right. Yeah. Claude Pro is my favorite right now for that exact reason. Once you've got the Pro account, it keeps up, it keeps that memory of you alive and uses it in a bunch of different windows.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now too. Is I prefer Claude over the other ones for that type of work. Well, what are some of the most promising tools that you're seeing out there right now in the marketplace?
Man, there are a lot. I've gotten really enamored with a combination of Midjourney, although now there's Flux. Flux is probably the better option, right? But Midjourney, there's a lot you can do with it. Flux, right, to create a lot of imagery, and then Luma Dreamlabs, absolutely amazing. And once you figure out how to leverage that tool, the video animations you can build, the motion graphics you can build are amazing. I use Ideogram quite a bit because it was better with text than I was finding with Midjourney.
Yeah.
But now Midjourney's caught up on that front. Flux is even better with text if you start using it.
Yeah.
But those for me are the big ones. Also Suno, if you need to put a little jingle together, or you need a little song to go with what you're doing.
Nice.
Great tool for that. So when you're you're trying to put together, I do a podcast. I actually do a couple. And in those, I use those tools pretty extensively to, background music, do my motion graphic, do your splash screen, all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, so you have, besides being on the tech side, you have a little bit of creativity that you're expressing as well.
Yeah, well, the long story on that is my degrees of multidisciplinary degree. I originally was going to be an architect because I didn't think there was any future in computers. Right?
That's a great admission.
Yeah, and then I learned pretty rapidly I was wrong about that particular fact. But I'm a painter. You can actually go to c-hammer.com and see a lot of my paintings.
Awesome.
But I do a lot of sculpture and stuff too. I've always been, left brain, right brain. I've got the creative and the technical.
Well, that's awesome. So yeah, you really do have a good perspective of this. Well, where do you kind of land in this idea that that artists and writers and graphic designers are all going to be replaced by AI eventually?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I actually I've always adopted whatever technology was coming out and pulled it into my process. That when caveman first developed a paintbrush, they didn't say, like that's the end of my charcoal stick. I'm never going to be able to create art again.
Yeah.
And when the camera came out, how many illustrators lost their job because they didn't adapt to the paradigm and started doing that? I think we're in the same boat. And for me, I use it a lot for that first blank page problem, right? Where I've got an idea in my head, but I just can't quite get it out. And so using those tools and being able to describe them, how I think about them, can get something generated quickly. But then I've got to clean it up. I've got to make it usable. It's not right away.
Yeah.
And I've described this to other people. I said, it's a lot like giving a 13-year-old boy a job, right?
Yeah.
They could do a lot of cool stuff, but you're not going to just let it go. You're going to have to lean in pretty heavily and, make sure it's not a total mess. But I do think it does take a lot of the non-creative parts of the job disappear pretty rapidly. The stuff that was just technical implementation, that part of the job. So if that's your job today in some kind of creative role, there's no future in that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing is that we're getting to the place where all those repetitive tasks in each stage of marketing are being updated, and we're building connectors between all those things now, because there's not an all-in-one platform yet, which in a month, there's 3 months, there will be. But right now we're still APIing stuff together, right?
Yeah, you still have to be somewhat technical to wire it together, but that's, to your point, that's rapidly evaporating. Like Vala, what we do is we do have our own large language model for a lot of what we're doing, because there simply isn't one that knows what we need it to know.
Yep.
But we are taking a lot of those tasks that used to take teams of people months and years to accomplish. We're replacing that with automation, which frankly is what software engineers have always done. We used to be done with people sitting down and writing it, and then there was word processing, and then there was type ahead search and autocorrect, so you no longer needed all the editors. And we've always been trying to automate, because the highest value for a human is not to do a rote task repeatedly. It's to create something new.
Right.
And I think of it as very empowering that way, even to the point of when I'm creating art, I like having something that can help me get a bunch of stuff out quickly, so I can say, nope, that's not bad, right? And then continue to evolve it.
Yeah, the iterative rough draft process, right? Like it takes whatever you're used to doing, it can do it in 15 seconds, and then you can improve it much quicker. That's what I see. Well,
100% agree.
Yeah. So any exciting, interesting projects that you're working on the software development side that you could give us a little taste of?
Yeah. So we did I'll tell you the genesis of Vala, because it kind of tells you where we're at too. When I first started the company, the first thing I created was a product called Brother. Brother was an entire software development team in a box. Like, it was an AI tool that you just interacted with, and it wrote software for you. And works great, frankly, it still does. But that allowed us to automate the next part, which was most software is not built in a vacuum. You don't just go create something new.
Right.
you integrate it with other things, to your point, right?
Yep.
So you have to be able to understand those things, which means you need to crawl it and understand it. So we started building that out. That was the next iteration. But now we're recognizing that once you have those two things, a lot of the tools underneath, let's say you were using a customer retention and management system, a CRM.
Yep.
And then over here, you were using a marketing tool, and then you were also using a product recommendation tool or something like that elsewhere. Today, if you're in a customer support role, you're going to be sitting there jumping between screens and pulling that together.
Yep.
What if we could just give you a chat window that did all that in the background, so that when you're talking to somebody and they say, I'm looking for such and such, you could just say, where's their package? And it would look through all the appropriate systems and come back with an answer.
Yep.
Once you have that, you don't need those systems anymore. And so what we think's happening is the death of software, that you're going to see intelligent ops tools, operations tools for businesses that are entirely AI driven.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think of it like a wiki with an LLM and the HR component, right? And the marketing component. That's how I think of it. But that there's this giant group of knowledge bases that we're plugging together so that people have this instant access to it.
That's right. I mean, and if you think of I said that I didn't think the computers had much future when I first got, like, I've been doing it for a while. I was like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But as soon as the World Wide Web existed, my view flipped.
Right.
And it was because the computer seemed like it isolated information into these boxes that you had to be able to converse with.
Right.
And I didn't see a lot there. But once information became accessible, that frees humans, because now I don't have to go to the library and spend, a week in the stacks trying to find information, right?
Yep, sure.
It's right there, I can access it.
Yeah.
Well, then the mobile revolution comes along, and all that information's like right here. It's with me everywhere I go.
For sure.
But I still have to be able to find it. What happens when you can converse with that technology to get the information in a way that you're comfortable with, by talking, by texting? When you can do that, unlimited human potential, like all the information, all of that is available to you everywhere. That's pretty amazing. And so for me, the final step in the evolution of computers was that, like, when does it start interacting with us in a way that we understand instead of the opposite? Why do I have to speak geek at it?
Yeah, right.
To get what I want.
Yeah. No, I was growing up in the 80s, and my dad was always like, I'm not going to learn how to type. I'm waiting for the computer to listen to my words and do what I tell it. And so I used to laugh because I thought he was such a Luddite, but he really was visionary in that way.
Well, enough Star Trek, you'd think that that's where it was going anywhere, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
for sure.
I just talk to the computer. I tell it what I want. It understands that.
Yeah.
Aren't all of our technologies supposed to enable us? I always talk about these things, that the screen as being like the tyranny of the terminal.
Right.
Why do I have to sit here at this stupid machine and interface with it all day? Why can't I live in the world and live a human existence and interact on a human way? Well, because we were missing this critical piece, but now we have it.
And now we have these beautiful, and they're only going to continue to get more sophisticated, are the bots, right? And the ability to do a lot of this work on our behalf that doesn't require human creativity, but we do it in advance, turn it loose, and it brings back some things.
Right.
What are you seeing in the bot world? Because I think it's still really to be developed at this point.
Well, you are starting to see a lot of that. So the first evolution of this modern version of AI, it was really about not contextualizing, tokenizing information, all bits of information. And there are still pockets of that need to be done. They tend to be privately held pockets. Like a company's information, they don't share out to the wide world. There's no model for it, so you've got to tokenize that.
Yep.
The second piece of it then is the automation of it, the bots that start to act on it. And there are frameworks that exist. There are great tools out there. We've built our own and leverage them all the time. We're starting to create them for others also. So there's a next wave that's starting to happen. It's like that bot layer.
Yep.
But some of the biggest problems that we're still overcoming, and there are great advancements on this, are just the cost to operate. Yep. You don't want it to, you don't want it to cost 10 cents every time you hit the enter key, because that's going to bankrupt most companies pretty quick.
Yep.
So getting the cost down, which would also mean getting the power consumption down, because that's another huge, the energy use is absurd. So getting those under control is going to increase the adoption, allow us to deploy more, which will give more power to more people and continue the cycle going. So,
yeah. Well, I love it. Well, I know you are not just a technologist, you're an artist. You also care about human beings. So talk about the project that you have that's about executives and health and
So it's, if anybody who's known me for any period of time would say, yeah, we've known you've had ADHD your whole life. I didn't know that, largely because when you have ADHD, you get hyper focused on things, but like a lot of your self-reflection piece is missing.
Yeah.
And so I was actually writing a different book. I had been writing it for a decade and I hadn't finished it. And then I was diagnosed. And that caused me to go deep. I hyper focused on it. What is ADHD? What do I need to know? How do I manage this? And what I found is I already had a lot of tricks. There's a reason I've been successful even with that.
Yeah.
Because I'd found hacks in my life to enable me to continue to be successful. So what were those? And so I put together a workbook that is exactly like I've been asked so many times, how did you become a CEO? Before that, a CTO, before that, executive, all these big companies. How did you do that with ADHD? It's there are some superpowers in there. One of them is the hyper focus piece, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So once I started really evaluating that, I said, I put together a workbook, which I'll share the links with you. You can share them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're available in a lot of places. But I also have 2 other books that are related.
All right, I love it.
So one was another thing that I get asked, because a lot of technologists have trouble establishing a self-brand. They don't even think it's important.
Right.
But it is important for most people that are knowledge workers, because you don't get past a certain level unless you're somebody they're seeking out. You don't get to present at major conferences unless they're saying, gotta have hammer. You don't end up in the CTO role unless people think of you as that already. So how do you develop that self-brand? And so I put together a workbook for technologists on building their own brand and how to do that. But the book that kind of kicked it off, which is hilarious because it was the final one of the group I did, was called Fragile. And it's looking back at what we've done with technology, and specifically computers and the advent of the internet, and how the way that we built it, making fun of Agile manifesto and all that a little bit. That's why it's called Fragile. How we built a crumbling world, in the sense that software ate the world, but software itself is not a very stable, reliable foundation. And there are cracks all throughout it. And as we saw with the major outage caused by CrowdStrike, no, sorry, I keep saying CrowdStrike, but that's not the right name. But the major outage we just had with United Airlines and all the banks and all of that.
Yep.
That was one component that is used by a great many companies. If you're using Microsoft Azure, you're using it. And that caused massive outages. And why? Because one person made one change without checking appropriately. And our entire world of software is built that way. It's all these little components that get reused all over. And that's not a reliable, stable future for mankind, especially as we move into this era of AI.
Yeah.
And if we're going to really rely on this technology to free us from the manual and tedious, then we better be able to rely on it. And that means we have to reevaluate how we build it, how we think about its impact on society. And it's effectively a manifesto as well as a critique and here's how we can be better. Here's how we can be more sustainable with our development.
Well, I appreciate that you not only identified the breakdown, but you also provided some potential solutions. So
most important part, to critique something without saying how to fix it is just lazy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's awesome. How do people get in touch with you if they want to have a conversation?
The easiest way is to go to christianhammer.io. There are a couple contact forms on there that you can reach out. There's also Techtastic, the podcast. You can find it anywhere that you get podcasts. And that has all my additional contact information. LinkedIn's always a good resource, but I do recommend christianhammer.io. I've written a bunch of articles. There's a bunch there. Every article where I've been interviewed also there, but that you can get a hold of me directly as well.
All right. Well, one last idea. What do you see happening over the course of the next 6 months in the area of tech?
We're going to see an increasing acceleration of this bot layer of tools and the automation of distinct problems. A lot of the things that I keep looking at are like medical transcription.
Oh yeah.
Like things like that, where you're looking at and going, why do we have people doing that? What a waste of, I'm sure it's a good paying job and you don't want to take people's jobs away, but it also is one of those places where a lot of errors can be introduced and it's repeating information that exists. There are a lot of rules out there like that. How do we start automating those for the betterment of society? I also think that we're going to see a lot more in the financial sector because you have generational transition that's coming with Gen Z, millennials, right?
Yep.
And the boomers have retired and are moving out of I think they're largely out of the workforce. But as you have that transition, you have a lot more technology literacy, tech native, and what's acceptable from your various providers. That level of acceptable just keeps getting ratcheted up.
Right.
And so you're going to see a lot of industries that have been very slow to modernize are going to be forced to go. And so we're going to see that start to spiral pretty quickly here.
All right, Christian. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for taking this opportunity to talk about all this technology and how to interpret it. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you again in a few months and seeing how things have changed.
Hey, I love being here. It was a pleasure to meet you, and look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.